Multitasking. All right.
Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't have a bio on Andrew, is the Director of On-Air Operations and Innovation, Rogers Media Canada?
That works.
Wow!
So,
Yeah, so he's going to take over. Do you need me to switch something
just
over?
go. Sponsorship. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. First of all, I want to apologize for conflicting with the baseball game. Unfortunately, it was about not conflicting with hockey games because unfortunately we're into preseason hockey, and so the studios are already in a state of use. So the way the evening's going to work, I'm going to start off. I'm just going to do a kind of a general overview of how we ended up here, and then I'm going to throw it to Tim, who's going to go into a little more detail about the build here. And then finally, we're going to do tours of 2 of the control rooms and the studio itself. For those tours, because we have a lot of people, and unfortunately we actually have more than we're supposed to, we're going to split them into 4 groups and kind of delay them up by about 10 minutes or so. So let me tell you a little bit about how this happened. So it all started on November 26, 2013. And the world was shocked that Rogers paid $5.2 billion for the NHL rights. And so was half of Rogers, because we had no idea this deal was coming. It was quite shocking. And you know, my initial reaction was, great, we've got national hockey. We've been doing hockey for 15 years already. What's the big deal? We do like 400 or 500 games a year already. You know, more than our competitors combined. What could possibly be a big deal about this? Then I found out, oh, by the way, we're going to build an 11,000 square foot set, and we're going to do multiple shows from it. And by the way, we're going to have a little studio that travels across the country on Sunday nights, hometown hockey, and does live remotes. And we're going to hire a whole bunch of new people. We're going to create a new office area, and we think, yeah, we need about room for 70 people. So suddenly what had been our facility down at 1 Mount Pleasant wasn't sufficient. Clearly to say, you know, we did not have an 11,000 square foot studio. So without getting into a lot of the details about the CBC deal, we got some value in kind from CBC that allowed us to use their facilities. And we're very grateful. It was a real team effort. It was a team effort with the CBC engineering team and the Rogers engineering team. And it's very much been a team effort from the production and operations side. So it's a real blend of people. So when you watch Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, it's some of the same people behind the scenes that have been behind the scenes for many years. But it's also a bunch of people from Rogers that have done hockey for many, many years. Operations staff varies. You know, Saturday nights there might be more CBC staff. On a Thursday night it might be strictly Rogers staff. But together everybody's worked. And it has worked very well. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the challenges of working outside your own facility, because at the end of the day, it's not your facility. And it was challenging, but clearly it worked out. We're just about to embark on our our second season. As I said, we're already in the pre-game mode. So the other part of the hockey deal for Rogers was it was much bigger than just Sportsnet. Now we were going to air games on City, we were going to air games on FX, we were going to air games in Punjabi, we were going to air games on CBC, of course. And what it allowed for was the general public to see a lot more games than you'd ever seen before, just because of the sheer number of channels. So that's why on our first Saturday night, you had the option of watching 6 games simultaneously. So, and obviously to try and coordinate that, CBC had done it to some extent for sure, but we had to take it kind of to the next level. So the other thing we wanted to do was, you know, obviously it's a world where linear television could be doing better. We're lucky Live Sports very much supports linear television, but the Game Center Live app, which had already existed with the NHL and did give you the ability to watch the games, we wanted to take that to the next level. So we developed the specialty camera, so the ref cam and other cameras that you could now stream on your device while watching the main game. So again, that was a whole other component that we had to get involved. We worked with New Lion in New York, trying to get them these various feeds. We had to get the NHL MPLS network basically to feed here and our One Mount Pleasant facility so we could get those cameras from the venues. It opened up some other doors for us because by default we now had the feeds from we had a backup feed from our own production trucks at the venues, but we also had a feed from the away broadcaster. So again, we've been given access to a lot more feeds than we had in the past. So infrastructure, I already mentioned we needed, office area for 70 people. It was a challenge. Just, we had to get the real estate groups together just to find some space in this building for that. Which studio were we going to use? There's 3 big studios up here for those that have seen them before. CBC had some requirements. They've got ongoing shows. We couldn't pitch them out, but we did eventually decide on Studio 41. It wasn't the biggest, but it was big enough for what we needed to do. I'd mentioned when we started it, we thought, we're building a really big set that was drawn on a napkin at some meeting once. And then we started thinking, well, you know what, there's a lot of games going on at the same time. One studio is not going to suffice. We need to do 3 live shows simultaneously. But it took us, the announcement was in November, it took us until July to really figure that out. So we had to kind of tweak the design of the set so that we had isolated areas within it. It worked in the end, and then the control rooms was the other challenge. We could not figure out for the longest time how many control rooms we did, and part of it hinges on the NHL schedule. We didn't know until midsummer what games we would be covering and what would be a worst case scenario. So what we ended up doing is we built one control room here. We physically moved a lot of equipment from what used to be the Score on King Street, built a control room, added to it quite a bit. Tim will tell you more about that. And then the plan was to lease 2 of the CBC control rooms, but we had the same challenge. CBC had other shows coming through, and we couldn't rely on it. So in the end, we are now using the one control room we built. We're using a second control room we use full-time from the CBC. We've Roger-sized it. And then finally, we have to use a third control room at our One Mount Pleasant facility. So we've got cameras, we've got the studio here, but everything else is happening back at One Mount Pleasant. So as you can imagine, that brought up another challenge. So originally we thought, 7, maybe 14 bidirectional fiber lines should do it. Well, clearly we had to crank that up. So we're now, I believe, at 35 lines from OMP to here, because that's where a lot of our incoming feeds are that we're already recording at One Mount Pleasant, the facility at Bloor. And then there's a lot of lines going back too. So the infrastructure requirements kept growing. At the last minute, we were told, yeah, you know what, Hockey Central at noon, that's our radio on TV show, if you've seen it before. I think we're gonna move that down here because that's where all the talent are. So suddenly, Frank and the engineering team at Rogers were faced with, now we've got 3 cameras, we don't have any camera people. So it was a case of putting in the Sony camera system, the robotic camera heads, and a single gigi connection, and suddenly now we've got everything remoted from our radio control room at One Mount Pleasant. So that's worked really well. It was totally independent of any of the other infrastructure we put in before. So, the working within the CBC building, we required, I think it was 42 RF mics. Well, that's a lot of frequencies, and CBC worked really well with us, and we had to do a test night. I forget, it was very late at night, and it was just a case of, are we having any hiccups with the RF, both IFBs and RF mics? So it's worked really well. How do you do things like bridging intercoms when you really don't want the Rogers network touching the CBC network and vice versa? So again, CBC and Rogers Engineering work very well to make those kind of things happen. And there were so many instances like that. And different workflows. For example, at CBC, the master control pods, or presentation pods as they're known, they're not flexible, they're not really designed for live, so that's why CBC uses integration suites upstream. Well, that was a new concept for Rogers. And again, working with that. Also, we own the inventory as far as commercials go. How do we get the traffic systems tied together? There were just so many other elements to this that we didn't even think of. Little things like, did you know we need 2 sets of lounges for our talent? Because, you know, a couple of guys, they like to sit by themselves, and then the rest of the guys have their own space. So it was just little things like that, and the cost of adding monitors, and it's amazing how it just added up. But again, a credit to Tim, who's going to get up here, and the bigger team, how they dealt with a lot of those things at the last minute. And because of a lot of those last minute things, the facilities, those control rooms and that, we were all set to rehearse in September, but a lot of the decisions had to be made by production staff that hadn't even been hired. This was a big project that required a lot of new hires. So it was very tough for engineering and operations to kind of get a sense of what was going on before the decision makers were in place. But again, I think we pulled it off. So I've talked a little bit about the connectivity. The NHL MPLS network's been great. We have 15 decoders at the One Mount Pleasant facility. We can feed those feeds back to us here, but we can use them for highlight packs and that as well. Another integration challenge was we're very much a Quantel facility at Rogers, whereas it's primarily an Avid facility here. So, making those systems talk to each other, exchanging files, a lot of it's been baseband, but we have been able to do some file exchange. It's really worked well. And we've had a lot of help, from the vendors involved to kind of make those things work. Other equipment that we never used before was, the 3D telestrator system that you'll see where, you can virtually move from one camera to another. It took a lot of time and energy to look at various vendors and pick a system that really worked. Something we added late in the season was augmented reality. Again, there were a lot of different options. So I think I pretty well said everything I need to say. To learn more about the details, I'd like to throw it over to Tim. Tim's just written up something that I've never done before. So Tim was a volunteer at Shaw Community College in Smith Falls. He graduated from Loyalist College in 92, 93, worked at Creative Post in sales and editing, and then where he joined us was when we took over the Score Media, part of the HD installation, the HD upgrade, which was a SMPTE meeting a number of years ago, and then started at Sportsnet when we purchased the Score. So I'll throw it over to Tim.
While Tim's setting up, I just want everybody to be, if you notice, and it's in my back pocket, the meeting notices that we send out, you'll see at the very top it says members only.